Avengers Secret Wars. They're making it. Probably. Unless they decide not to, but at least now, it's coming. As much turmoil as Kang Dynasty is in right now, or should we say Avengers 5, I do think Avengers Secret Wars happens. That might even take the place of Kang Dynasty and become Avengers 5, or maybe Avengers 5 and 6, or Secret Wars Part 1 and Secret Wars Part 2. Who knows? After all, the original is the most significant crossover in the history of Marvel, maybe in all of comics. It set the stage for years of storylines. It's where Julia Carpenter came from. It's where Titania came from. It's why Colossus and Kitty Pryde broke up. It's where Spider-Man's black suit came from. It's why She-Hulk was on the Fantastic Four. Secret Wars mattered. And the second Secret Wars, the 2015 one by Hickman and Ribic, not Secret Wars 2, the sequel we don't talk about, but Hickman and Ribic's Secret Wars is a truly epic crossover that upset the status quo in a way that few comics are able to manage while telling a fun and satisfying story. And Kevin, you went onto the stage and told us that we were getting an Avengers Secret Wars in 2026. As of now, it's been pushed back to 2027. I have a feeling it'll go further. But the thing about Avengers movies is that we usually know going in who the bad guy is. Avengers 1 was Loki. Avengers Age of Ultron was Ulysses Klaue and his friend Ultron. And the Infinity ones were Thanos. So then who is the bad guy of Secret Wars? Well, we just kind of assumed that since Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars were sold as an item, this would be an Infinity War Endgame situation where Kang Dynasty ends with Kang winning ultimate power and rewriting the universe to make Battleworld the setting for Secret Wars. He would be King Kang, and we probably wouldn't call him that, but King Kang sounds pretty fun. Basically, he'd do what Doom does in the 2015 Secret Wars. And that may have been the case, but several things have changed. The big one is that the original Kang actor, Jonathan Majors, was just found guilty of assault and harassment of his ex-girlfriend and immediately dropped by Marvel. And sure, they could recast the part. Plenty of people have suggested plenty of actors for the job, but the bigger problem, I think, is that just overall, people aren't so hot on Kang. I think separate from the Jonathan Majors stuff, Kang just isn't scary because the Ant-Man guys beat him pretty easily. And while I think the original characters in Phase 4 and 5 are working, the big picture stuff is not coming together as nicely. So I wouldn't be surprised if you guys at Marvel take the opportunity to course correct. Drop the unpopular villain formerly played by the problematic actor and create a new entry point for the MCU fatigued. But if not Kang, who? Who should be the big bad of Secret Wars? This is the $3 billion question. So in this video, Kevin, I'm going to break down the characters that could fill this role, be the new mastermind behind Secret Wars. I'm going to talk about how that story could play out and the positives and negatives of each character, ending with who I believe should definitely be the bad guy in Secret Wars. And I'm going to do that by answering two questions. How could they, meaning in the universe of the story, how would this character actually take power? And, but should they? From a storytelling and franchise building perspective, is this a good move? Let's start with the big one, Doctor Doom. How could they? Well, this is the easy part. Doctor Doom seized power in both Secret Wars comic events. In the original Secret Wars from 1984 by Shooter, Zek, and Layton, Doctor Doom uses Ulysses Klaue's body to steal the power of Galactus and uses that to steal the power of the Beyonder. So let's say we have a Council of Kangs. If Doom steals their power while they're distracted fighting the Avengers or something, he could use it to remake reality in Secret Wars. And in the 2015 Secret Wars, Doom used the Molecule Man to kill the Beyonders and absorbed their power. Then he used that power to reshape reality and turned himself into God Emperor Doom. So let's say we have a character with the ability to warp reality, like Wanda, or the Phoenix, or whatever. While the Avengers are fighting the Kangs, Doom can revive a reality warper, use them to kill the Kangs, and then absorb their power. Both of these options seem super doable, but should they? I think we all know the answer to this question is a big fat no. It is simply too early for Doom to make a move like this. It doesn't even sound like he's going to play all that significant of a role in Fantastic Four. So if he's introduced and immediately does the most significant thing he has ever done in the comics, I think we've wasted Doom. They should get years to work up to this. Try different schemes, make some unusual allies, and then when we feel like we really know Doom, he springs his great trap. I don't want Doom to just be a Kang replacement. He deserves many phases like Thanos that are devoted to making him incredibly formidable. Make a series of Fantastic Four movies where the Fantastic Four just barely beats Doctor Doom. Make a Doctor Strange movie where Strange needs to go to Doom for a spell to kill Dormammu because there's some magic that only Doom knows how to use. Have an Avengers movie where Annihilus takes over the world, except for wherever the Avengers are hiding, and of course Latveria because Doom is able to protect his people. And then, and only then, can Doom make his move to steal the power of the Beyonders and remake reality. only after we believe Doom can do it, and only after we have very clearly defined what he wants. So Kevin, if you really want to make Doom the villain in Secret Wars, delay the movie. Throw it back to Phase 8 or something. But don't waste this great opportunity because Kang isn't working. Doctor Strange. How could they? So this one is tricky. We know Doctor Strange is one of the most powerful players in the MCU. He has caused incursions, rewrote everyone's memory, and was instrumental in defeating Thanos. He's also somewhat reckless. If he thought he needed to do something dangerous and morally questionable, like preventing an incursion destroying our world by taking lots of power and merging our world with another, he might do it. After Multiverse of Madness, we know he's fine with being the one who holds the knife. And if that power got to his head, I could see his guilt over things like the death of Tony Stark or the death of his sister convincing him to rewrite reality and make it more just. It doesn't even need to be God Emperor like Doom. This could be closer to a House of M situation where no one can figure out exactly who rewrote reality, and only by exploring this new world can they see what changed and use that to fix everything. I mean, John Krasinski, Mr. Fantastic, did say Doctor Strange was the biggest threat to the multiverse, but he got turned into spaghetti, so what does he know? But should they? I guess Strange could, but he seems like he's already learned this lesson. In Multiverse of Madness, Strange faced off against the Scarlet Witch but exercised restraint and did not, unlike the other Strange, try to steal America's powers for the good of the multiverse. He let America stop Wanda himself. So it doesn't seem like this Strange would decide to take away everyone's free will. Like maybe he would rewrite reality, but not in the way that's interesting. He wouldn't fix things because he knows they don't need to be fixed. Strange also seems to have given up on Christine. Strange fixing the watch at the end of Multiverse of Madness symbolizes his acceptance that he needs to move on. So the idea that he would rewrite reality to make Christine fall in love with him just doesn't feel right. Plus, we've already seen Doctor Strange try this. What if Doctor Strange already had the "I'm going to use my power to rewrite reality for selfish reasons" arc? That's also what Sinister Strange did in Multiverse of Madness. So what would be the point of doing that again? I like that our Strange is the one who is more or less well-adjusted and proved the Illuminati wrong. After all, they're the Illuminati. They can't be right. So could Strange do it? Technically. And if it's Strange or Doom, I think I prefer Strange, but his development up until this moment would suggest he's not in the kind of place to make that decision. Scarlet Witch. How could they? But Wanda's dead. She got crushed by that big mountain at the end of Multiverse of Madness. She can't come back. I mean, she totally can. In fact, Wanda's one of those characters who doesn't usually stay dead. She's not quite at Jean Grey levels, but she's on her way. And it makes sense. She's incredibly powerful and magical, so even if she dies, her energy can continue to exist and recreate her body or whatever. And that power does mean MCU Wanda has done some pretty remarkable things already. She fought Thanos to a standstill, destroyed an Infinity Stone, defeated all of the sorcerers at Camartage, killed the Illuminati, and most importantly used her magic to bring back Vision from the dead, created 2 children, and enslaved an entire town by trapping them in a bubble of reality she controlled. And in WandaVision, the Hex was growing. It seemed like if left unchecked, Wanda's Hex could have easily taken over all of Earth. So she seems quite capable of rewriting reality to create Battleworld. And Wanda is, perhaps even more than Doom, Marvel Comics' highest profile reality warper. Starting with Avengers Disassembled, Wanda has lost it and caused all sorts of trouble. She, under the influence of Doctor Doom, brought some Avengers back from the dead to kill some other ones. Then she, under the influence of Quicksilver, did House of M, reshaping the world into one where mutants were the dominant species and the House of Magnus reigned supreme. And then she did No More Mutants, depowering all but 10% of the Earth's mutant population. So rewriting reality to a version that makes her happy is right up Wanda's alley. But should they? I mean, the argument here is that she already did this. Wanda fully used magic to turn her town into the ideal sitcom home, and then she felt bad about it. And then she tried to walk through reality and steal some kids, but then she was stopped by Strange Wong in America, and she felt bad about that too. I think Wanda gets it. Like, don't mess with reality for selfish reasons. Now, could she think she's doing it for unselfish reasons but accidentally create her dream world? Maybe, but it's so similar to WandaVision, it doesn't feel like that's the way this is gonna go. However, I could see Wanda being the molecule man of this story, a battery that someone else uses to reshape reality in their image. But who could do that? Well, how about the Cabal? How could they? So in Multiverse of Madness, we get introduced to the Illuminati, a group of more or less good guys who band together to make hard choices. In the comics, this boils down to, Hulk is so dangerous, what do we do with him? Send him into space, that's Illuminati stuff. But there's another similar group called the Cabal, made up of villains and anti-heroes created by Norman Osborn during the Dark Reign event. The Cabal was eventually disbanded because they all just wanted to backstab each other and couldn't really get anything done. Also, Emma Frost was secretly a good guy. And that was it for a while, until in the run-up to Secret Wars 2015, an incursion was coming and Namor reformed the Cabal with members like Thanos, the Black Order, Terrax, Maximus the Mad, and the Black Swan. Eventually, they went full bad and Namor quit the team, but was also exiled with them. It's a long story. Point is, there was an evil villain supergroup led by a character who exists in this universe and would certainly reshape reality in their image if they believed they needed to, or if it benefited them. Like, imagine Namor working with Mordo, the leader, Red Hulk, Zemo, Venom if he's in these, using the power of someone like Loki or a resurrected Wanda to avoid an incursion and remake reality in their image. But should they? I kinda like this one. Villain supergroup could be fun, and a battle world run by villains could make for an unusual movie. We've spent time with a lot of these characters, but none of them would make sense as the big bad of a phase by themselves. But together, I think it could work. It's not my favorite version of this story since it is pretty arbitrary. I don't think this phase has been building towards the Cabal, so it'll have the same problem as Doom, where it's clear that they subbed these guys in because they didn't like Kang. But will that feel like the climax of this phase? Probably not. Still, I like giving Namor and Mordo bigger roles, and this does feel like something MCU Namor would do, especially if he thought he could protect his people. Loki. How could they? This one is pretty easy since Loki is currently in charge of maintaining all of the strands of reality. He's become the god of time, and we know that new universes are born from divergences in the timeline, so hypothetically Loki would have power over those timelines. And if there was an incursion and two timelines were going to collide and one of those two was the one with Mobius or Sylvie on him, I think Loki might make the move to protect them, even if that meant meddling. I'm not saying he would definitely do it, but I could see a world where it happens. What would Loki's version of Battle World look like? I guess he'd rebuild Asgard. His parents would probably still be alive. You could do the Thor Corps like in 2015 Secret Wars, where a team of Thors patrol Battle World, but should they? I don't know, it feels like his character's in a very good place right now. Like, I think Loki understands the balance of the universe and the sacrifices he must make for the greater good. I think those sacrifices would include letting the universe die, especially after Sylvie basically told him that she's okay with things being given a chance and dying naturally. I do think there's something to Loki being one of the few characters who wouldn't feel like they're just taking Kang's place. Loki has been built up as a main character in these last two phases, and giving him this moment to actually rule could be interesting. Like, what does Loki's world look like? He's been talking about it since 2011. But I don't know, it just doesn't feel like the right move for his character. However, I do think Loki either needs to die or get captured by whoever does make the big move. Honestly, I would not be surprised if Kang Dynasty starts with all the Kangs flooding the TVA and killing Loki, sort of like how Infinity War starts right after Thanos decimated Xandar. He does appear to be the guardian of the timeline, and if the Kangs want to cause all sorts of time chaos, Loki may stand in their way. I could also see a world where a character captures Loki and Loki plays the role of the Molecule Man here. Maybe they hypnotize Loki somehow and trick him into creating Battle World, and only after the heroes free Loki they're able to stop the real big bad. Reed Richards. How could they? Depending on how Fantastic Four goes, this one seems quite possible. After all, Reed is very involved in the 2015 Secret Wars event. But to understand why, you need to understand the Maker. Basically, in Marvel Comics, there's a universe that runs parallel to the usual 616 universe called the Ultimate Universe. It's 1610 is its number. It's where Miles Morales is from. In that universe, everything happens similarly to how it did in 616, but with some small and sometimes large differences that made these universes unique. And no difference was more significant than the story of Reed Richards. Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, has the typical origin. Big nerd, meets Ben, Sue, and Johnny, gets superpowers, forms the Fantastic Four, but then it got very different. Sue's father, Franklin Storm, was killed during an event called Ultimatum. Everything fell apart. Sue rejected Reed's marriage proposal, and the team disbanded. This left Reed vulnerable to his worst impulses. He wanted to control everything and improve his universe no matter the cost. Reed lived for 1,000 years in a time bubble, and used that time to evolve his own army of superhumans called the Children of Tomorrow. He even grew his head to accommodate his big brain, which led to him wearing the weird helmet. And from that point on, Reed was straight up a villain who called himself the Maker. So a Reed from another universe, perhaps played by the same actor as our Reed, or maybe a new actor, could show up and try to kill our heroes and take over reality. Seems completely within the realm of possibility. And this new world he creates would be just like the 2015 Battle World, with the Maker taking Doom's place as Sue's husband and Franklin and Valeria's father. But should they? On one hand, I think evil Reed could work very nicely. Making evil Reed God Emperor would complicate things for good Reed and the rest of the heroes who know him. It would also force us to further define his character. If the rumors are true and Pedro Pascal is playing Reed, it could be fun to see him go full villain. We could also get a new actor to fill that role, even if they've already played Quaz before. On the other hand, I think we may run into the same problems we ran into with Doom. We haven't spent very much time with this Reed. We don't know enough about him to appreciate the similarities and differences in the Maker. This feels like a Phase 9 sort of move. Also, making the Maker the villain in Secret Wars would basically force Reed to be the most interesting good guy, and that feels like a mistake considering the same way Endgame was the big moment for the original Avengers. Secret Wars feels like it'll really focus on characters like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Thor, and maybe Loki and Wanda. They're the ones that have really grown over phases 4, 5, and 6. Reed and the Fantastic Four will have just shown up before Secret Wars starts, so giving them the spotlight feels premature. But I do love the idea of an alternate reality version of a good guy showing up and remaking reality, just not that good guy. Which brings us to our final character, the one I think should be the big bad in Secret Wars, Tony Stark. How could they? But Tony Stark is dead. Sure, our Tony Stark is dead, but we don't know that's true everywhere. And we know Tony Starks are able to do some pretty incredible things like discover elements and create artificial intelligence and even invent time travel. So it shouldn't be long before one invents multiversal travel. And depending on where he is on his journey, if Tony found out about another universe that threatened his own, I can absolutely see him doing whatever it takes to keep this universe and his family safe. So I'm imagining a version of Kang Dynasty where throughout the story, the Kangs are creating incursions and the TVA is working to keep the peace. They bring in great minds from all over the multiverse, including a version of Tony Stark, perhaps the one we expected to see in Multiverse of Madness. After all, that universe seemed to have working Ultron drones, and at least as far as the movies are concerned, Tony built Ultron. And Tony is frequently on the Illuminati. In fact, the usual team makeup is Reed, Charles, T'Challa, Black Bolt, Strange, and Tony. Multiverse of Madness had no T'Challa for obvious reasons, and Mordo stood in for Strange, but that did leave one vacancy. And I know apparently the empty seat was for a Balder cameo, but that can always be retconned to having been Tony's seat. So this version of Tony has known about incursions for a while, since his Doctor Strange caused one on his world, and he's been trying to work out a way to prevent them, but there's just too much chaos, and if there's one thing a Tony who managed to pull off Ultron would hate, it's chaos. Especially since look what it did to his teammates. Chaos magic decimated the Illuminati. If I'm Tony, the first thing I do is capture my universe's Wanda. Even if she's not magical, she holds some connection to a being whose power spans the multiverse. If Tony is going to save his world, he's going to need that kind of power. So he studies her. I mean, Tony Stark never had a problem imprisoning Wanda before. He'd figure out how chaos magic works and turn Wanda into his own personal molecule man. And then he would make a reality that would not devolve into chaos whenever a new witch or wizard shows up. One built on order and science. But should they? Yes. This solves every problem Marvel currently has with Kang and those other potential substitutions. We know Iron Man. He's not perfect. Only after decades of suffering and growth was he able to become the hero we know from Endgame. If along that path, something changed, Ultron worked, he didn't get attacked in Afghanistan, he stopped Thanos before the snap. If Tony was never humbled by a great defeat, of course he'd think he should let it ride. Continue to be in charge, and do whatever's necessary to maintain order. The ends justify the means, whatever it takes. And hey Kevin, I read you want to do a movie where you bring back the original Avengers. That's a bad idea, unless they're bad guys. If Tony Stark populates this new world with versions of our dead characters like a Black Widow that's his sheriff or a Captain America who's president of the United States, that could both be a lot of fun from a storytelling perspective and get people who really liked those Avengers interested in seeing this movie. And the actors could be fun. Say you want to bring back Downey and Johansson and all those guys. Great. And yes, Kevin, I know that you said in that Vanity Fair article that you are not going to resurrect Tony Stark. Quote, "We're going to keep that moment and not touch that moment again. We all worked very hard for many years to get to that, and we would never want to magically undo it in any way. But first, the dump truck full of money has done crazier things before. And second, technically, this wouldn't be resurrecting the character from that moment. This would be a different version. So it really wouldn't take anything away from the Earth 616 or 199999 or whatever Tony Stark. This is a new guy. But say you still don't want to. You have other options. ones. You can take actors who were almost in those roles and would still be pretty fun fits, like Tony could be Tom Cruise or Timothy Olyphant, Natasha could be Emily Blunt or Gemma Arterton, and Steve could be Alexander Skarsgård or Ryan Phillippe. You could also cast the next generation of those roles and continue with those actors in the future. But most importantly, an evil Avengers, perhaps called the Superior Avengers, would be a big challenge for our main characters. Would Spider-Man be able to fight his former mentor? Could Sam and Bucky take on Steve? Could Clint and Yelena fight Natasha? We've said that Phase 4 and some of 5 has been about legacy. Well, this is the ultimate test. Can our heroes protect Tony and the rest of the Avengers' legacy, or will it be that of a madman who took over reality? And do they deserve to take their mentor's place? Some of our characters might find themselves liking Tony's new world. Maybe Peter is living comfortably alongside his birth parents. Or Strange is a successful surgeon married to Christine. Carol and Rhodey can be fighter pilots. Wanda can have her kids. Loki can be king of Jotunheim. We'll give everybody what they want and force them to give it up to save the world from this new multiversal tyrant. And characters like Wanda, who've been here and done this fake reality thing already, or Spider-Man, whose identity is a big multiversal secret not even Tony can crack, can reassemble the Avengers. Plus, if you bring Tony back, you get to do the most significant Iron Man armor look that we never saw in the movies, the Superior Iron Man. Practically, it's the same as the last two armors that we see in Infinity War and Endgame, nanotechnology supplemented by a symbiote that lets Tony build whatever he can imagine, but narratively it serves a very different function. In the comics, and I swear this is true, Wanda and Doctor Doom did an inversion spell to stop the Red Skull, and also turned all the bad guys good and all the good guys bad. Deadpool was nice. Carnage was a good guy who murdered people, and Tony Stark became even more of a mess than usual. This is the Superior Iron Man arc, where Tony Stark made his fancy white armor without a mask and created an app that made everyone look hot. And then he started charging for the app once everyone was addicted. He also beat up Daredevil. Superior Iron Man is the worst case Tony Stark. Narcissistic, authoritarian, ruthless. So imagine if that's who we meet in Kang Dynasty. And throughout the movie, the heroes working with Tony can tell something's off about him, but they can't put their finger on it, and they need to beat the Kang, so they can't really do anything about it either. And then, at a moment of vulnerability, Tony steals the power of the defeated Kangs and uses it to create a new world where he's in charge. And in Secret Wars, our heroes need to find each other and work together to stop evil Tony. Also, all of the really big, powerful multiversal characters right now, Tony hates them. He got thrown out of a window by Loki and never got to experience his redemption arc. Wanda messed with his mind and Tony threw her in the raft. I could absolutely see an evil Tony being thrilled with the opportunity to use them both to control time and reality. It's the best option. We get to bring back a character everyone loves. We can either use the original actor or someone new. This would be a character we as an audience completely understand. Our heroes would have an incredibly difficult time fighting against a friend, and this leaves characters like Doctor Doom free for the future. So yeah, Tony Stark. Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, and supervillain. Speaking of philanthropy, sometimes the hardest part of philanthropy is just figuring out where to give. There are over 1.5 million nonprofit organizations in the United States and millions more around the world. How do you know which ones can make the biggest impact with your donation? This video sponsor, GiveWell, was founded to help donors with that exact question. They pore over independent studies and charity data to help donors direct their funds to evidence-backed organizations that are saving and improving lives. GiveWell has now spent over 15 years researching charitable organizations and only directs funding to a few of the highest impact opportunities they found. Over 100,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $1 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests that these donations will save over 150,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. GiveWell wants as many donors as possible to make informed decisions about high-impact giving. You can find all of their research and recommendations on their site for free. You can make tax-deductible donations to their recommended funds or charities, and GiveWell doesn't take a cut. One of my favorite charities they work with is the Malaria Consortium. Malaria kills over 600,000 people annually, and for about $7 you can protect a child from malaria with preventative medicine. It's given during the 4 months of the year when malaria infections are especially high. If you've never donated to GiveWell's recommended charities before, you can have your donation matched up to $100 before the end of the year, or as long as matching funds last. To claim your match, go to givewell.org and pick YouTube and enter Nando V Movies at checkout. Make sure they know you heard about GiveWell from Nando V Movies to get your donation matched. Again, that is givewell.org. to donate or find out more. As always, huge thank you to everyone who continues to support the channel on Patreon. Thank you to everybody who watched this video early and ad-free on Nebula. To everybody that follows me on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, all that stuff. I'm Nando V Movies on all those platforms. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.